Why? Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to DnDTime Talks, where we discuss all things Dungeons and Dragons. I am Pete.
I'm Jeremy, and I think, Pete, you sound a little jabarbled.
Jarbled?
Yeah, we chewing on marbles?
What happened? Was it?
I don't know.
Was
I think
I a
you were
robot?
attacked. I think you were a robot for a second. That's okay, though.
Oh.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Pete and Jeremy's DnDTime Talks.
Pete and Jeremy's DnDTime Talks. Jeremy, how are you tonight?
I have been sick for the past a while.
When you say that, you mean like sick, right? Like really cool and radical?
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm amazing. How are you, Pete?
I'm good, and I'm really excited to talk about elves, because that's what today's topic is. Specifically, the second chapter of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, which is all about elves.
That's this book.
Yeah, I got it here too. It's a good one.
Oh,
I like
you
it.
had it right there.
Yeah. I was just looking at it a little while ago before we were to get ready to talk about elves. It's fun. Me and Jeremy are both have really both liked Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes so far. There's a lot of cool stuff in it, and that's what we're going to be talking about over the course of the next hour.
Yeah, pretty much. If you want to talk about elves, well, you're in the right place. Just do so in the chat. We'll be paying attention, and it should be a good conversation. If you have other topics you want us to talk about, let us know, and we'll kind of note them down for next time. We got IC, Plunder, Shiva, Max, my people. Welcome back to the stream, guys. How y'all doing? How are you all doing, chat? Are you all hopefully better than me?
Oh, Lance there too. What up? What up, Lance?
Perfect. All right, we got the whole crew. We got it, and then we got everyone who's ever been in D&D. Oh my goodness! And we got Frog here. Fantabulous. Excellent. Sword, I didn't even see you, my beautiful baby Sword.
Sword, I didn't see you either.
Yeah,
but Sword, I promise you that there is love. I'm not blind. But I promise you, Sword, that there is love for you. It's right here, next to my heart, and inside my. I don't know. You want to talk about elves?
Yeah, but before we do that, Baby Sword is Dagger. I like. Before we talk about the elves, just a quick note for I see Plunder was asking in chat: are the races legal for Pete and Jeremy's D&D time yet? The answer is not yet.
Yes.
Very soon, though. Probably next week. Pete, at this point, we've looked through some of these sub-races. We've looked through all the elf ones.
Yes.
And
I have no issues with any of the elf sub-races.
Yeah, in fact, I'm actually very, very psyched about how, I think they're very well done. And then, at least compared with some of the other races they've released.
Yep. No issues with any of those. I had no issues with any of those tiefling sub-race options either.
Yeah, so it's just really a matter of us making sure we're ready to handle the deluge of new inputs to our little system, as well as I want to look at the GIF. I haven't looked at them yet.
Nor I.
And I don't want to say yes to something I haven't looked at. Oh yeah, of course, the rabbit folk. We got to talk about them next time.
Oh yes. And we also have to talk about how we're going to add in that stuff too, which nothing that we've done on D&D Time Brews is legal yet either. We'll let you know when that is around too.
Hard vetoing the D&D Time Brew stuff for now, but it'll come out soon.
Yes.
Anyway, while we're talking about, I don't know, let's talk about elves now. We're talking about something different. We're talking about elves. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes for 100 years. Mordenkainen is great. Everyone loves this book. It's real good. Actually, it is really good. Before we even jump too much into it, Pete, this book has just been actually enjoyable to read.
Absolutely.
Have you felt the same way? Or
oh no, for sure. It's been relaxing. I curled up with the elves last night for a couple hours. And
Just
I don't know,
chill.
can I like, just to give you some context before we jump into this, look, can I just read a small chunk of this book to like, this I think kind of put into perspective everything I really liked about this book. This is a D&D book about D&D lore and rules, but this is just a line from the elf sections, and it's kind of about the elven trance, but this is an excerpt from that. A memory is a curious thing. One can come into consciousness unbidden, evoked by an unexpected scent, or the words spoken by a friend. A memory can also be elusive, foiling all attempts to recall, and sometimes remembered only after the hunt is abandoned, like a word on the tip of one's tongue. Some memories pull at the heart, weighing it down and holding it there as an anchor moors a ship. Others buoy it up and make it flutter joyously like the wings of a bird. Some memories lie in wait like predators, ready to leap out when the mind or the heart is vulnerable. Some linger like scars, not always visible but ever present. That's from this D&D book. Like, there's some legitimately good writing in this book, and it's not just like rules text, and it's not just like information, like lore dump. It's just good.
It waxes philosophical with you for a bit.
Oh
which
yeah,
is nice. It's nice to have that little intellectualism in there. It's not just spewing, information at you. It's providing it in an interesting and engaging way. But anywho, elves, Pete.
Yeah, we're going to talk about elves. So that's the second chapter of the book. We were originally going to do all of the races, all of the race chapters, because there's one about dwarves, there's one about halflings and gnomes, and there's another one about the Gith. We were going to do that all combined with the elves, but there's a lot there, and we ended up not doing that. So we might go through and do all those together. We might do them one at a time. We don't know what we're going to do for the future. But for now, we're just going to be talking about chapter 2 of the book, which is elves. Mostly we're going to be talking about kind of our own opinions of the text, what we think has like the most value to employ in your games, and just kind of like, what we liked, what we didn't like. Yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like this book has really changed my perspective on what an elf is in the D&D kind of context. A lot of people
For sure.
really think of elves as pointy-eared humans. And I think this is a really cool divergence from that, giving them a lot more depth. So I guess if you're playing an elf and maybe you're looking for a little more excitement or nuance to your character, maybe looking for some more backstory and background to push your character in. If you're world building, like say you're a dungeon master and you're world building and you want to give elven cultures in your land a real defining difference, right, between just generic human or mixed race cities in your fantasy land, this book is super, super cool. Yeah, I mean, that's really it. And a lot of the things in this book are intended to be specific for the Forgotten Realms, especially when relating to like deities. Like, for example, Lolth, right, is demon queen of spiders and dark elf goddess stuff. But you can have Lolth analogs and in other settings that actually talk about some of those. And I think those are super usable in like whatever you're doing, right? You don't have to be playing in the Forgotten Realms to steal this part of the Forgotten Realms and reflavor it a little bit. Your own thing. But yeah, that's it. I think it's really cool for players, for Dungeon Masters. It's just great. I think it was almost... It's hard for me to say, but I think it's pretty much equally useful for each.
For each, yeah, there's stuff for both for sure. I think there's maybe a little bit of a lean towards players because there's like a lot of the stuff that's specific to elves. I mean, for one thing, there's just the player content with like the sub races, but also, I think a lot of that elf information, I don't know, I guess it could inform like NPCs, and I guess there's a lot of aspects of this, because we're gonna be talking about it more, but like they talk a lot about like the elven life cycle and kind of how in the elves kind of long lives they evolve and how their longevity affects their outlook. And I think there's a lot of aspects of that which aren't really useful to players. Like there's not a lot of like there's there's points in the elven life cycle they talk about where it's like really they become really introspective and kind of just have a desire to not adventure, basically, to just be back in like kind of their home worlds. And that's stuff I think more for kind of like DMs to play around with. So yeah, I guess it's a fair balance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot like when we were talking about the chapter 1, right, in the Blood War, where the Dungeon Master's Guide gave you the blatant description of the layers of the hells, and then Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes gave you the feel and like the tone and the evocative emotions of those. That's what this book does for elves. The Player's Handbook gives you the blatant description of this is what elves look like, their abilities, and what they do. This book gives you so much deeper, like a full rounded, I guess, description for them. But anywho, yeah, I just think it's real cool.
Yeah, agreed. Mr. Plunderloot, shout out to Illustrati. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I really liked Illustrati too. That was one of my favorites. Eilis, maybe.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
There are a lot of those elven names are tough to pronounce. I mean, shout out to Corellin and Selune from Reflected, of course, to Selune.
Well, Selune is not an elf god.
Well, I was going to say Selune wasn't an elf god. Yeah, Corellin is though.
Yeah. So let's, I
was going to say the same thing. I think.
Yeah, let's just start talking about what's in the chapter, right? Because that's what we're talking about. This is again the second chapter in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. There are a bunch. There are 5 chapters, and then a 6th chapter, which is the Bestiary. What? The other chapters are dwarves and Durgar, Gith and their endless war, and halflings and gnomes. So, yeah. Right now we're just talking about
the Bestiary is massive.
Oh yeah, the Bestiary is gigantic, which is not surprising. So yeah, what's in this chapter? Well, first there's elven origin myths. This is really cool because the way it's presented in the book is presented as a myth, and I super dig that.
I thought the exact same. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it in a second, but or probably immediately after this. But
yeah,
also in the chapter, information on the elven life cycle, and info on different factions of elves. For example, the Drow, Eladrin, and the Shadar, which are now just elves. Big change from Fori, right? Some details about all of the elven gods, both the elven regular pantheon for like all of the regularly old elves, like the called the Seldarine, and the kind of dark pantheon of the Drow, which are the Dark Seldarine. We got some.
Seems weird that they just call themselves the Dark Seldar. It feels like they could have come up with a cooler name.
Yeah, it says that they only did that as like a mockery of the of the other ones, but
still, it feels like they're not taking themselves seriously enough.
Yeah, right. I agree. And there is some talk about the Feywild and Eladrin, which is cool. But I think it, in some ways, and we'll talk about this probably when we get to it, is a little almost non-conjunct with the Player's Handbook elf stuff. We'll talk more about it later. Some cool information on the Raven Queen, which is nice. The Raven Queen hasn't ever really been fully laid out before and talked about, so this is some cool information for her. Only a briefly even mentioned for you. And then some cool sub-race options, which we'll talk about last. Because I feel like most of you, if you have access to this book, have already cracked it open and looked at those sub-races because they're cool. Yeah. So Pete, you want to hit us off? Start with some cool
let's talk about some of the lore. We're going to be talking a lot about like different figures such as Lolth and Corellon, and so let's just give you a brief backdrop on what those are so you know what we're talking about. So for starters, let's say you don't know what an elf is. All of you probably have a general idea of elves from other kind of fantasy settings. You have like a good sense. And I think what a lot of people's definition of an elf was more informed by Lord of the Rings than what is written in the book of D&D. And that is basically they're tall, they are very beautiful, they are graceful, and they are humans that have basically pointy ears, and they live for hundreds of years. And that stuff is all true. That stuff is all true about elves in the lore that is presented in this book. Although I think it's less. They have a sort of aloofness to the affairs of shorter-lived creatures, and I think in kind of more traditional, I guess traditional is not the right word, but other fantasy settings, that's more of a not caring, a lack of emotion. But I think in this, they kind of stress that it's just because of their longevity. A lot of these affairs of, shorter-lived races like humans just don't seem as important to them, and they know that they can just kind of wait them out. So I think that these elves come across a lot warmer and less cold than, say, the elves of Lord of the Rings or a lot of other fantasy settings.
It's also important to note that in D&D, elves are actually a little shorter than humans on it.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, they're actually shorter. You wouldn't have thought, but it's true. No one ever looks at the height, so you never know that.
In my brain, they were always just tall.
I think
I've learned something
that
today.
changes wildly from game to game.
Fair enough. And so this chapter gets into the elven myth of creation, which rotates in particularly around the two gods that we've been talking about, Corellin, who is the principal elven god, and then Lolth, who was a lesser god that was created kind of, in a sense, created by Corellon, and then eventually betrayed him. So Corellon was the first elven deity in kind of the early days, and there's a very kind of vague and mythic nature to the way they present it, which we talked about, and it's something that I really liked. And it's just kind of like when you're reading those old like Norse or old like Greek myths, there's always like kind of the beginning times, which is confusing, like there was a great nothing, and then from that nothing sprang a giant, and then that giant's tears became the waters of the world. Like, it has that kind of feel to it. And Corellon was a shapeshifter. They weren't an elf in the sense that you think of elves now, and they eventually kind of reached that point in the lore, but traditionally and originally, Corellon was very mercurial and just this creature of passion and joy, impossible to pin down, broke allegiances very easily. And they were just like this really joyful being. Like, they describe in the book how one day Corellon could be like a flowing river, the next a puff of wind, the next, an animal. But it would take up all these like strange forms, and that kind of idea that Corellon could become a river really lends that kind of mythical air to it, which I really liked. But eventually, in a battle with Grumpsh, who is an orc god that we won't be talking about much here, some of the blood that he spilled in that battle became the first other elven deities, one of which was Lolth.
So yeah, the idea was that these elves these other deities came from Corellon's own blood. And
Yes.
They were the first kind of what they refer to in the book as the primal elves. They also were just beings of pure, ephemeral, mercurial joy that just kind of followed Corellon around and just went wherever the hell. Exploring.
We're whimsical.
Yeah, exploring and really experiencing everything. It was one of the spirits was came to be known as Lolth. Which, if you know anything about Dungeons & Dragons, you know that Lolth is a horrible spider demon. But that's not what she was then. Then she was just another ephemeral kind of being, another one of those primal elves. And she, seeing all of the other races in the world beginning to, really stake their claim and make a difference and create things rather than just existing, convinced a bunch of the other elves to try and assume a more physical material form. And so this kind of story is where the original elves came from. It is the elves that followed Lolth in stark contrast of what Corellon was all about, with the kind of freedom and mercurialness, and adopted permanent physical form. So it was at that time that Corellon kind of interpreted this as a betrayal, and that's how the story goes. As a result, some of the elves were tried to like go back on and be like, "Oh wait, no, Corellon, we didn't mean to betray you," and other ones were like, we're going to stick with Lolth. But Coraline was just like, I hate you all. Why'd you all do this? And threw all the elves into the material world anyway. And that's where the elves really became stuck in their physical forms, because they had adopted them with Lolth. The elves that did not adopt a physical form, that never followed Lolth, are now what are known as the Seljarine, the god, the pantheon of the elves. They are still these primal elven spirits that live with Coraline in what are the factors? Arvindor. Now, Pete, tell us, what is Arvindor?
Arvindor is, as you said, elf heaven. It is sort of.
Is that it?
It is. That's really, honestly, that's pretty much it. It is the elven homeworld. It is their home plane. It is. Is it considered one of the outer planes?
Yes, actually, it's part of
an outer plane.
It's in Arborea.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure where it fit in because I knew they said the outer planes, but I never thought of it.
Yeah, they mentioned it very briefly. It's in Arborea.
Okay, yes. So it's in Arborea, and it is very much like the Feywild, but kind of without the evil. Is a good way to think of Arvandor. Very whimsical, lots of Fey creatures, nature, beauty, but without that kind of like dark bent that the Feywild has. Which is why eventually a lot of the elves kind of found their way to the Feywild and felt very comfortable there because of how similar it was to their homeworld of Arvandor. But yeah, they don't really talk about Arvandor a ton, other than that it's like this place that the elves. Yeah, they go into it a bit. Basically, it's like all elves just want to be on Arvandor. Once an elf goes there, like they can't bear any time not spent there. Is kind of how they describe the place. Like it's truly a paradise for elves.
Yeah, except a certain group of elves never go there, and they are the Drow.
Indeed.
The Drow are the physical elves that followed Lolth. They now live in the Underdark, being cast out by Corellin after Lolth's betrayal. And they are pretty much, I mean, if you know anything about Drow before, this doesn't change that. They're slavers, they're evil, they are a matriarchal society filled with betrayal, backstabbing, assassinations, etc.
They worship Lolth and spiders.
They worship Lolth. And the Dark's Seldarine to a slighter degree. It's the Seldarine, right? I'm not saying that wrong.
Yeah, that's how I was saying it, the Seldarine.
Okay. And then last but not least, they toss in this thing at the end of the chapter. They have a couple pages, maybe like 4 pages about the Raven Queen, the Shadar-kai, and the Shadowfell, which we'll come to later, but the Raven Queen is another elven entity, being god thing in the Shadowfell, and the Shadar-kai are other elves that are in the Shadowfell now.
The Raven Queen.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about it. So Pete.
So yeah, that's kind of all like the major. That's all like the major lore.
Yeah, that is the easiest, most boiled down. What is in this chapter? Now, Pete, why is it useful? Like, why do you need this information? What is, in your opinion, the single most important thing you can glean from the chapter?
The single most elves aren't just pointy-eared humans, I think, is the one thing that you can take away. If you take one thing away, is that elves can be more than just a pointy-eared human. And there's a ton of cool lore here. They go into a lot of detail about elven culture. Like I said, they talk about the real focus is on how elven longevity affects their perspective and the way that they act. And I think that gives the players, it's interesting, because I thought it fell in kind of a tricky spot where I thought it was really cool, but I think a lot of the information in this book is also really nuanced and difficult to roleplay. Because one of the things that you take away from this is that the elves are really nuanced in their thought. One of the core principles that they talk about that govern the way elves act is this idea of, I'm going to look it up, passion versus restraint. And the elves are described as an extremely passionate people.
Like Coraline.
Like Coraline. But they also live their lives not really displaying emotion and trying to like externally cover up that passion. And that kind of creates a role-playing space that, while like maybe there's a ton of stuff going on in an elven character beneath the surface that you can take away from this, it also is a little bit hard, I think, to actually play that in a way that people realize that you're using all of this really cool elf lore without, I guess the way to roleplay it would be to just talk about like to internal monologue externally a lot. Like, but there's definitely also some more really cool stuff that you can use in here. Did you have, like, Jeremy, I had one character idea that I got very excited about for an elf after reading this. Did you have any?
I mean, a whole bunch, but it's been... I mean, I think going into them now, because most of my ideas are related around the deities that we haven't really talked about.
Okay, yeah, and that's the other thing that you can really start kind of getting into is embodying those deities. But just from like one character I really liked just from like the lore of elves is they go into this piece of lore where at the end of their lives elves get these kind of crescents on their eyes when they go into their trance, and that means that they're about to pass on. And in the new elven lore, there's a lot of discussion of kind of reincarnation and rejoining Corellin when they die, and then being reborn later is kind of the same type of elf. And they talk about how some of these like really old elder elves that are about to die kind of throw themselves back into life with a renewed passion after kind of, you know, fading into just elven communities for many, many years, like centuries. I think it's really cool. I really like the idea of playing a character who's realized that he probably only has a year or two left after 700 years and is now trying to like get as much done as possible in these last couple of years of his life. I thought that sounded like a really cool D&D character.
Oh yeah, I super dig it. Especially if you're playing like a high level kind of game. Just like, yeah. I've been a level 20 wizard for 300 years, and I've just been hanging out in my forest.
I think you could also pull it off with a really low level character, like level 1. I've never adventured before, but it's time to start.
I've been a gardener forever. I'm so old, my voice is starting to crack, and I'm an elf. But yeah, no, I one of the things I really dug about this book, right, is one of the features that is super core to elves, right, that you open up in the player's handbook when you read is, trance. I don't sleep. Elves don't sleep. They trance. They get a long rest in 4 hours instead of 8. Okay, great. That's super cool. That's mechanically awesome. I dig that. I want that. I'm going to do that. Now, what does that mean? Well, in the player's handbook, you got no idea. This book goes into so deep detail of what that trance is and what it means. And I just think it's so cool. So like as a core premise, and I feel like even though Pete and I might talk about what's in this book, we're not really spoiling anything, because really the nuance of it and the depth of it isn't something that Pete and I can just kind of spout in half an hour. But basically in your trance, in an elf's trance, they can think back and revisit any memory in their life. Which is super freaking cool. I just love the idea, right, of having that kind of almost eidetic memory kind of vibe, where you can cement a memory into your brain and then revisit it just kind of on a whim. I just think that's really neat. And then, of course, it talks like as elves get older, they start experiencing memories from their past lives, which is cool. So actually, taking a quick jump off of that, I know I'm jumping from thing to thing to thing, but okay, reincarnation. That's something I had no idea was super prevalent for elves. I mean, maybe I'm just a noob, but that was something that I was very surprised to see in there as like a core tenet that elves are reincarnated. Because one of the things that most people don't realize in the Forgotten Realms, at least, setting, is when a character dies, when a person dies in the setting, their soul goes to one of the outer planes, based on either what deity or whatever. And so Arvindor, which is in Arborea, which is one of the outer planes, is where elf souls go. And then the fact that those souls are then put back into new elves is interesting, because that's very different from what you think of any other race. Like humans don't get reincarnated, dwarves don't get reincarnated, orcs don't get reincarnated. Nothing else gets reincarnated in the Forgotten Realm. So it's just interesting that they went and put that in there.
Mr. Plunderloot said in chat, I think that used to be called Reverie. Yeah, it still is. That's reference to the trance-like state that is. They refer to it in this book as the Reverie as well. And then I like Bionic Shiva's comment: reincarnations of hundreds of years isn't long enough. Now they need to live forever. But I think. I mean, it's true. Also, but it just adds a cool dynamic to the way you think about an elf, because they're no longer like a creature that has this and that knows and understands that they're going to be reincarnated. I mean, that informs so many of their decisions, because they're living not just for one lifetime. They're living for the elven people, because they are going to like come back into, you know, another elven body someday. So like the idea of like legacy and generations and keeping their people and protecting their people is so much more significant. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I just think that also really helps to inform a really cool character. Excuse me.
So
yeah,
Jeremy,
a whole ton of that cool stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, we talked about this a bit beforehand, but favorite of the Seldarine gods. They go into a lot of the different gods in a lot of detail, kind of what it's, yeah. They don't do all of them because there's just too many to do all of them. But they talk a lot about, you know, what it's like to worship them, what the god's kind of realm is like, and their kind of domain. A lot of really cool stuff there. But yeah, Jeremy, I know you had a cool one in mind. Mine's going to be a huge cop-out, so you do yours first.
I mean, really, there are two. But I think my favorite one of the Seldarine, I really like Hanali Selenil. I think that's how that's pronounced. If that's
it's
a hard
as good as I would have ever gotten
I will
it.
eat my shoe. That's a hard C.
Hanali Kellenel.
Kellenel. Anyway, Kelenile. There we go. Hanali is the and it's the elven god of beauty. And I think that is such a stereotypical kind of thing with most elves. I think of kind of this prim, proper perfection, right? You don't really think of an elf covered in scars and blemishes most of the time. Unless you maybe planted that is a really, really unfortunate drow. But anyway, I think it's just a really cool deity. They do a really cool job of explaining kind of the mystique and the mystery around the deity. They explain its own little section of Arvindor where it has a special magical pool that it bathes, the deity bathes in every day to keep their beauty, which isn't really necessary. But they somehow and occasionally bring other elves up in. Yeah, they bring other elves up into Arvindor to also bathe in that pool. And it talks funny little stories about like what like bards might say about this elf deity, or what temples actually could look like to this deity, which I thought was really nice. If you're a dungeon master and you're building out an elven like city that would have a temple to this god, and the players go there for a reason, it's really nice to just be able to flip it open and be like, oh, there are lots of pools of water and yellow flowers float in them, and having these cool little tidbits to really make your world a lot richer with very little real effort necessary. This just the cool symbolism and ways that elves kind of can work with that, I guess.
Yeah, I really liked Hanali too. Hanali would have been my second pick if I didn't pick. I'm sorry, everyone, that I'm going to pick the main one. I picked Corellin for a couple of reasons. Fair enough. For a couple of reasons. One, I absolutely love the kind of whimsical nature. I love like that I love that pre-Corellin where he feels more like an idea even than a god, which makes him feel more like a god. Like, you can't picture Corellin in your mind, which I love. Like, just this idea that one moment he could be like a puff of wind, and the next moment he's just a towering tree. Well, probably not a tree, it doesn't seem like his style. Or like they describe where he might be a flock of birds, like not one bird, but he's multiple birds. I don't know, it's just, that's really cool to me. And the other thing that really pulled me into Corellin was just this idea of a thing that they talk about in the book called the Mysteries of Arvindor, which is this meeting of elves where, for reasons that are a little bit unknown, even to the elves that are involved in it, Corellin calls to certain individuals of elven kind and just calls them to a particular location, be it through a vision or just through whatever means, through some kind of sign, and tells them to gather at this place. And then all of the elves that do gather there are, for a short time, like reunited with Corellin, and are able to live as they once did, since all elves kind of sprang from his body, from his form. And I just think that that's such a cool quest idea, because it feels really mysterious. Like, it feels like the elves who get the call, in my mind, don't even understand why they're going there, why they want to go there. And I feel like for an elven character in your game to just like throw this thing in and just give them this go here at this time and learn what it means to be an elf, basically. I think that's just a really cool plot hook that really kind of sold me on Corellin.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely. One of the things that's really interesting, though, is why the elves have to keep living on the material plane. And the answer is because, as much as this book paints Corellin as this benevolent, kind god who loves them, he won't forgive them because Lolth still exists. Which is like, it's hard
fickle
for me to, I mean, I get it. Like, I understand it's the whole deity thing. But like, I hate all elves forever because this one still exists. Oh, by the way, hey,
kind
elves,
of an
I love
asshole.
You. Come to heaven,
Kind
so
of
I
an
can
asshole.
throw you back out.
That's funny.
But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I mean, one of the things this book doesn't do, just for those who are interested, is there is another side to the Lolth and Corellon betrayal story. We talked about how Lolth kind of lured the other elves away and convinced them to take physical forms. There's more to that story than that. This book does not give that other side of this. And I think that was an intentional choice by them, by Wizards of the Coast, because this is supposed to be the thoughts of Mordenkainen, of this wizard. And I think they do a really good job both through the little notes on the pages and through the actual writing of the text to show that. It really paints Corellon in a really good light, despite the pretty obvious, like, Corellon, you're kind of a dick, kind of undertone.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Or rather, overtone. It also talks about...
Yeah, it's not subtle.
Yeah, they aren't subtle at all. There are a whole bunch of other deities we're not really going to go into too much detail about, but let's talk a little bit about the Drow.
Yes.
So they talk a bunch about the Drow in here, which is super cool. Some of this you may already know, but if you don't, they talk about the matriarchal societies. They talk about how kind of slavery works, why the Drow act the way they do, and about all of their dark deities, the dark Seldarine. So, Pete, I'm wondering, of everything in the Drow section, what do you think was the most interesting?
I had 3 things that I liked in the Drow section.
Oh, jeez. Okay, I wanted 1, but sure, hit me with 3.
Okay, I'll go quick on all of them.
No,
one,
take your time. I'm fine.
When they were talking about when they were talking about the demons and the kind of relationship between Drow and demons, since Lolth is a demon lord and kind of lives in the abyss, a lot of Drow make pacts with demons, and it's a high status symbol to have a demon slave as a Drow. One thing I really loved is that there was just a note. I want to get the exact wording right if I can find it here in the book, but basically I'll just give you an idea. It's that it is a capital crime to fuck up a demon summoning as a drow. It's like, doing it wrong, is that okay? Because I love that, because the implication is, yeah, it's fine to summon demons, as long as you don't, like, you gotta keep your demons under control. It's so drow. Like,
yeah. I remembered reading that. I was like, it's only wrong to screw it up.
Yeah, everywhere else, it's just a crime to summon a demon, not to fuck up summoning a demon. So I really loved that little chunk. And then I guess I was just going to pick two of the gods that I liked.
Yeah, well, before we dive into the dark gods, one of the things that I really loved about that chapter was it was talking about the trials in the demon web.
Oh, yeah, that was another thing. That was really cool.
The demon web pits are Lolth's layer of the abyss. And one of the things that was super cool about it is in this book is they were talking about as part of overall drow society, right? Drow sometimes would be called to the demon web pits to be tested by Lolth for their loyalty, their ability, etc. And one of the things that I loved about reading that is drow that succeeded would be elevated in status and everything in their society. However, drow that didn't go and then lied about having gone and succeeded would also be elevated, as long as they got away with lying. And the drow societies as a whole are totally down with lying about that stuff, because if you get away with the lie, well, Lolth is cool with that. And I just thought that was interesting double think there. It's like, you can be tested by Lolth, and that makes you great. But if you lie about being tested by Lolth, and you get away with lying, that's also great, because Lolth said it was okay for you to lie about it because you got away with it. If Lolth wasn't cool, you wouldn't have gotten away with lying about it.
That's really good.
I really loved that little bit of drow doublethink in there. It just gave me that little bit of extra love.
Also on the subject of great plot hooks, and just like, if you have a drow in your campaign that worships Lolth, absolutely let them do that trial, because that sounds so cool. And then just give them some power that comes out of it. Like, I would absolutely put that in my campaign for any drow, like Lolth, any Larshali out there. I would absolutely run that in a long-term campaign.
I mean, brutal. I mean, that's terrifying though, because then you get turned into a Drider if you fail.
Yeah,
I don't want that.
But sick. It's just sick.
Yeah, I mean, sure. They did a really cool job talking about Driders in here too. They really defined a Drider's place in drow society, which
it's almost like they knew that I didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
the way they presented it, they were like,
Pete, in case you don't know what a Drider is.
It's really how it felt. It was like, a lot of people are confused about what Driders are, and I was like, I'm one of those.
Yeah, they are not yeah, exactly. Anyway, I thought it was good.
I agree.
Let's talk about some of those gods. So, unlike the elves above on the surface, like the high elves, the moon elves, etc., the drow don't all worship all of the dark gods. The drow are kind of picky and choosy, and if they do worship one of the other dark Seldarine that's not Lolth, they do it like secretly. And it's the doublethink is there too, right? Where like a drow matron will try and squash out worship of one of the other deities within her family, and then secretly pray to that deity for more power, which is just, I think it's hilarious, personally. But,
I agree.
So, Pete, who is your favorite dark Seldarine?
I have a tie. Can I do two?
Yeah, please. You can do two, and I won't do any.
No, Jeremy, no, never mind. I'll just do one. I liked Gonadar. Is how I'm going to pronounce it.
Gonadar is almost like not even one though.
Yeah, I guess
that's not like a drow. He's not a drow deity.
That's kind of why I picked two.
Okay, so go ahead. Who is Gonadar, Pete?
Gonadar is the one who lurks, who doesn't really feel like an elf god at all. It feels more like a god of slimes, which is what he is a god of slimes, but they list him as one of the drow gods, and apparently he's one of the elves that was born of Corellin, and I don't know how this guy ended up doing what he does, but it's unspecified. That's made unclear. The thing that I like about him, he has this nickname that is the One Who Lurks. People don't even want to say this god's name, sort of a Voldemort situation, because bad or great things can happen when you say his name. Drow who are like of really low station may pray to Gonadaur because then just like they describe how like a whispered word to him, just like the slightest of prayers may bring an incredible bit of luck. But then like dedicated priests who like offer sacrifices and rituals to him day after day may just find themselves devoured by oozes. Like he's extremely fickle, he's random in the way that he works, and I just love the idea of like just like a drow on the like their last dregs just throwing up this Hail Mary to Gonadaur. The One Who Lurks.
And I mean, my choice was Malik or Malyk, however you pronounce that.
That's a cool one too.
The reason I like this god, right, is like, it's the wild magic god. It's the reason for like wild magic sorcerers that show up in drow societies. And I love the idea that like that's the one, it's the chaos, right? It's the chaos to the otherwise very regimented, tyrannical leadership of drow houses. And I don't know, I just think it's a Malak. Okay, cool. Thank you, Mr. Plunderly.
Hey, thank you.
But yeah, I super dig it. I just think he's really neat. And you notice I'm saying he, which is kind of important because Malak is I believe was one of the male deities, which is very interesting because like there are actually quite a few of them in the Dark Seldery, despite the Drow being such a female-dominated caste. What the word escapes me. Matriarchal. Thank you.
Yes.
But yeah, Malak was the one I was talking about earlier, where you know a priestess of a house, the high priest, the matron mother, may try and squash out worship of this deity between everyone below her, in an apparent loyalty to Lolth, and then you know secretly pray to this deity for more power unto herself, which is just neat, and is a bunch of that kind of double-think backstabbiness all throughout the Drow's Dark Sahanine or Seldarine.
Yeah, it's cool that like which Dark Seldarine you worship as a drow says a lot about who you are, and like others make decisions about you as a person, what your beliefs are by the god that you worship, which isn't nearly as true for the elves, which I guess that should be true for any like devotee of any god, but it doesn't feel that same way about the elves.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk a little bit about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the other one I was going to do is Eiley Stray, which is the one good. Yeah, that was the one good drow god. I won't go too deep into it. Basically, she's a drow god who's kind of a god of the moon, and when drow come up for raiding parties, she kind of tempts them and basically gives out this call like, "Hey, there's another way," and she doesn't help you. She doesn't like guide you and tell you how to survive. She just basically tells you you don't have to live this life of cruelty and backstabbing and treachery if you don't want to, which I just thought was a really cool effect. It's just the message. I don't know. That's what I liked about it. It's like I like that she doesn't like help and protect those people. She just gives them the option. That's it. That's all I have to say about Eiley Stray. Really cool. There's a lot more to her, but I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the things I really love right now, right? Eiley Stray kind of wants that the rejoining of the Yell, of the drow up back to the surface. Everyone's happy with Coralon, everything's great again. And I super love that. I love that this kind of deep conflict between Coralon and Lolth, it keeps coming back to it as this very strong core theme in this elf chapter. Except there's one part of it that's kind of weird, and that is the part we're going to talk about now, which is the Raven Queen and the Shadowkai.
Yes.
The Raven Queen is she gets tied in with the whole Lolth Coralon And basically her story now in this 5e version is she was a powerful elf queen during the time when Corellon and Lolth were fighting, which, for a minute, just reel back, that means the elves have only just really adopted physical forms at all and aren't really supposed to have empires, because that's why they adopted physical forms in the first place, was because they were jealous of that stuff. So it's a little weird that we're using that terminology. It's a little the one disconnect I see in this book so far. Or not the one, but one of the bigger ones. And the Raven Queen got a whole bunch of elves together and said, "Elves, give me your souls and your magic, and I'll become a god, and I will force Corellon and Lolth to be friends again." And all the elves were like, "Yeah, no problem." You laugh, but that's basically what it says. Then a bunch of evil elf wizards, which, again, elves have only just barely adopted physical forms at this point, but whatever, had decided to sap some of her magic to cast real powerful spells and make themselves like gods. And she got all pissed, and they fought. The magic got corrupted. They got pulled into the Shadowfell. Raven Queen's mind was shattered by the event, and she became this kind of embodiment of chaos and madness in the Shadowfell. Or not chaos, but madness more so. And
and kind of sorrow.
Yeah,
is a big one, I think. They're very sad boys. The Shatterkai are sad boys.
Yeah. And so that was I got that. I could rationalize that without any issue. The problem is, and this is one of my least favorite, I hated this one part of it. And it was rationalizing the Raven Queen in this conflict of Lolth and Corellon. Because it said, the phrase they use in the book is, Lolth and this is paraphrased, but Lolth and Corellon both saw this as a horrible betrayal. And so the memory of the Raven Queen was wiped from the minds of all elves. First of all, what? Like, that just, if Corellon could do that, why wouldn't he just remove the memory of Lolth from all elves, and then there's no problem ever? Like, it does, for me, that's a big kind of bad disconnect there. It doesn't click to me. It doesn't pass the logic test. Everything else with the Raven Queen, though, is sick. Which,
to talk about something cool. Yeah, and to talk about something great about the Raven Queen that they talk about, is they literally just put an adventure in here for you, and it is called The Fortress. Well, not like an adventure in the sense where they tell you what to do, but they tell you what the adventure is, and it's called The Fortress of Memories, which is where the Raven Queen lived. And they describe how this is a fortress filled with odds and ends of particular interesting value. The Raven Queen collects tokens that have significance emotionally, like maybe like a hairbrush that was used by someone like right before in like the final moments before they died, and all of these kind of like strange objects and knowledge that she collects, and in particularly knowledge of like strong emotions, and she has built this like really sad palace called the Fortress of Memories, and people can go in there, adventurers can go in there and learn kind of about themselves. In going in there, she's able to kind of like access people's memories and create like a trial for them based on their own past. So it's like a way for adventurers to confront their like inner fears and secrets and kind of bad memories, and overcome them in this Fortress of Memories. So it's just really cool. It's asking you to send your party or your character with a tragic past to this place so that they can confront that very literally, and directly. Like it's an adventure handed to you in this book on a silver platter. They also discuss like how the Raven Queen might reward people with like, you know, a lost piece of knowledge that only at this point she has access to because her collection is so strange and vast. Things like that. It's cool. I really liked the Fortress of Memories. It's explained better than I explained it in the book. It's a little bit confusing to read and kind of the ideas, but it's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. like I said, the only qualm I have with how the story fits in, but nothing else about it. Like everything else about it's awesome.
Yeah, where it ends up is cool.
Yeah, exactly. And because actually we are running real short on time, well, we need to talk about one other important thing that was in here, which is not the Sea Elves. We're going to talk about them at the very end. Maybe.
I was going to say the Sea Elves?
No, the Eladrin. We didn't talk about the Eladrin.
Oh, we didn't talk about the Eladrin. We skipped right over them.
The Eladrin are the elves. So when the elves were first kicked out of Arvindor by Corellon, who was just like, I hate you all. And the elves are like, but we're not following Lolth. And he's like, get out. And he threw them out while they ended up in the Feywild. From there, elves went to all sorts of other places, but some of them stayed in the Feywild, and they were twisted and changed by the Feywild to become Eladrin. Eladrin, featured in last week's episode of DnDTime Talks, are super magical, whimsical elves, basically, that are from the Fey. They're, generally speaking, a lot more flamboyant. In a lot of ways, they're they're the elfiest elf, I think, is the way that Wizards has been spewing them. But they're kind of the most Corellon-like elf, but they're also the ones that care the least about Corellon, which is kind of weird.
I do kind of like that, though.
Yeah, I dig it.
Which makes them, I mean, it makes the sense that the elves that are the most like Corellon wouldn't care about Corellon.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, it tracks.
They don't talk a ton about him in here. They do talk a little bit about how the Eladrin don't really care too much about going back to Arvindor. They'd rather stay in the Feywild and maybe try their hands at eventually getting into the becoming a part of the Seelie or Unseelie courts through reincarnation or whatever. And cinnamon buns are really tasty. I agree, Fark. Sorry, I got distracted. But yeah, that's pretty much it. They just talk about that a little bit. They are still the closest to the primal elves that primal elves can be. We didn't talk at all about Evermeet, but let's not talk about Evermeet. It's a cool location they mention in the book. Read about it when you buy it.
And then at this point, it gets into the elf subraces. It details them. They're pretty well balanced. They're good.
Really well balanced. I am shocked at how with such finesse Wizards was able to make the different seasons of the Eladrin subrace really feel. Subrace is not the word to use. The Eladrin race choice option really feel like well balanced, like cool. The charm effect on the is it spring that has a charm?
Yes.
Yeah, the charm effect on that, the ability to teleport allies on autumn.
Wait, no, the spring was the spring was the teleport allies, and the autumn is the charm.
I had them reversed. Yeah. I mean, I just think they did a super good job of really making all of the different seasons super compelling choices. Like, there's no, I don't think there's one best, and that's what I super dig about.
Well, one of the other things about it is that they specified that an Eladrin can change their season.
Oh, of course, but this gives you like you want to change your season as an Eladrin based on your character's emotions and how they're feeling.
Not because of the mechanics of the ability.
Exactly, and the fact that all of the mechanics are good in like roughly, I think, fairly equivalent in power, is awesome to me. You know, I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
that they actually made it compelling to actually just choose from your RP because they can all be really useful in different situations. Or even
I picture the autumn one too, man. I love the autumn charm effect because I literally picture them teleporting to you, and because it's two creatures, I just picture the Eladrin teleporting, and then has an arm around each shoulder of the person that they're teleporting to.
How are you, friends?
They added sea elves. They didn't talk at all about sea elves, other than when they were talking about this god that the sea elves worship. And actually, they touch on them a little bit? Yeah, they didn't really touch on the sea elves much. But basically, they're underwater elves. They're really important in the world of D&D. I'm surprised they didn't give them a little bit more of a space. But Yeah, they talk about sea elves. You can breathe underwater and be an elf.
I will say the deity from the Sildarine, I cannot remember his name right now.
Doom, it's something with a D.
I'd have to crack it open to look. Really, really cool deity. The deity's kind of deal is they reclaim knowledge that is lost to the sea, whether that be empires that have been slowly eroded away through eons, or ancient scrolls that were being transported in ships and lost beneath the waves. Are all
Deep Sashalas.
Thank you. Sash. Call him Sashayla.
The Deep Sash.
The Deep Sash. I super dug that deity. I think they were super cool. I think actually they're my favorite of the Seldarine. Sorry, Hanali. You're the back of the line.
And then there are at the end of the book, there are some story hooks for drow adventurers, for non-drow adventurers. Yeah, that's it. There's
if you like stuff Bond's personality traits, ideals, flaws tables that are in the player's handbook, you think those are awesome. They give you a lot of cool inspiration. This is great because it has a bunch of those at the end too, just for elves and elf adjacents. But I think that's gonna do it. We've kind of worked through that whole chapter. It's good. We didn't touch nearly everything that there is in there. If you listen to this stream, don't feel like you've read the book, because there's so much more cool stuff that we did not have time for. Yeah, we have barely scratched the surface of.
It's a dense book.
Really, how many pages? I didn't count.
It's, I think, like 32, 36, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, so we just roughly summarized
36. Well, it's 36 pages, but it doesn't sound like a lot.
30 pages.
Oh, 30 pages. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's like big, beefy player's handbook pages.
Yeah, and you know what? There are not a lot of pictures. I
was actually expecting. Me too.
There are not a lot of pictures. It's text. Tiny pictures. Text. Which is fine, because it's cool. But
I mean, that's technically it's better, but also I just like pictures. The art is so good. The pictures that they have are always amazing.
Let's just open up to a random monster. And
oh wait, I got the best art.
Oh look, I opened up to Shatterkai. These enemies are broken, by the way. Don't do them. Don't do the Shatter.
I opened up to a demon lord. You'll see it on stream soon.
Yeah, Pete, that's if you were holding it up to your webcam. Instead, we're going to see the top half of Demon Lord in your face. But
no, I think I got it. I think I did good. Okay. We'll see. Maybe I did bad.
Pages for Big Baby Bartholomew. Exactly, Andrew.
Nope, you're right. You got the top half of the demon. You can see the top half of Ziggs.
You see the top half of the Gut Boy moments before betrayal by Jubilee.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I think that's all I got too. Thank you everyone for hanging out, for bearing with us today. I know I'm really not at top capacity right now. You can probably hear that, but hopefully I'll be good to go for Friday's D&D time.
Indeed. Thank you all very much for coming and hanging out. It was fun. Next week we're probably going to keep going on Mordenkaine's Tome of Foes.
And this will be the fifth, which, oh boy. Maybe we'll actually finish the race chapters. Who knows?
Dwarves and gnomes and Gith and all that sorts of stuff. If you don't care about, if you guys like Mordenkaine's Tome of Foes and us talking about it, let us know, and we'll drag it out more and do them all individually. If you're kind of also let us know that, and we'll probably still do it, but we'll condense them more.
Yeah,
that's it.
Also, one of the things that we're thinking about doing, which we're really interested in, excuse me, once we finish with these race options, is going through and picking some of our favorite monsters from this book and talking about those. So
yeah,
I think that'll be a super sweet.
This is the one I'm most excited about personally.
I'm also stoked about it.
I've already told you one of my picks.
Is it me?
Yes.
Yep, I'm in the book, guys.
Check out Stream of Many Eyes.
I'm in there under Oblex. Anyway, thanks everyone for visiting. I'm Jeremy.
Okay, I'm Pete, and this is.
Wait, never mind. Wait, you remembered something. We're gonna talk with too many eyes. Wait.
Yeah, you sounded like you just wanted to go.
No, it's
you
okay.
good?
No, we're good. We're great. I forgot my water, and I'm really dry.
Okay, well, I'll talk for a little bit about Stream of Many Eyes. Is coming up. I actually don't know the date. I just know that it's soon.
This Friday.
This Friday. Check out. Actually, wait, no, don't watch that. Watch us.
I don't know what it is
on D&D time on Friday, but also there's tons of YouTube content that you'll be able to check out from the Stream of Many Eyes, where Wizards is getting ready to announce their next adventure, and they got like tons of guests, and they're going to be running games. It's going to be eye related, probably. I didn't know anything about it, and I said maybe it had something to do with Vecna, and Jeremy laughed at me. So I don't know what it's going to be. Jeremy thinks we're talking aberrations.
Alien invasion of Waterdeep. I'm going fucking
It's probably not going to be that.
Waterdeep.
But yeah, check that out. And then also watch our stuff. That's it. We good, Jeremy?
Yeah, we got Pete and Jeremy's D&D time on Friday, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific. As always, don't miss it, or else I'll be sad. And then on Saturday, assuming I'm not dead because the sickness goes away, I'll be doing a behind the screens, which is basically just Jeremy sits down and hangs out with chat and preps for the next episode of DnDTime Delves, which will be on Sunday. Behind the screens is going to be at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. Pacific on Saturday. And then DnDTime Delves is at 6 p.m. Pacific on Sunday, where... if you're wondering what those are, I don't know. Look below the stream. I'm dead. I can't do this right now.
All right. I'm Pete.
I'm Jeremy.
And this is D&D Time Talks.